Hey, everybody. Welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. This is our show where we shine a spotlight on leadership in public service, and we have deep conversations about sustainability and how we can create a thriving future for our cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. Today's guest is Russell Sander. He is the assistant city manager for Marble Falls, Texas, and he comes from a firefighter background. We have a great conversation about the things you learn in the fire service that transfer almost directly into city management and the value that can be found in people that have been in emergency services and then transfer into city management. There's so much value here for people that are looking to make that jump, but also for assistant city managers to understand all the challenges that stack up. You're going to find so much value in this conversation. Thank you for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. Russell, thank you so much for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities, man. I'm so excited.
Pleasure to be here, really.
You and I have already had a few really good conversations, and so that's why I'm so pumped for this. So you're in an interesting situation where you came up through the fire service, interestingly enough, and now you find yourself, you took the almost probably insane leap of becoming an assistant city manager.
Oh, the fire guys say I went to the dark side.
I don't know if they're entirely wrong, but you've now made that transition, and so I'm curious. That brings a really unique perspective. What's one thing you really wish people understood, either about being an ACM or being a fire chief, or that transition in general?
I think there's several things, right? It's I think the transition one is in the fire service. You know, you're trained to make decisions on an instant.
Yes.
And city management, you got to slow down because you have to have that opportunity to have that collaboration with others, and you got to seek a consensus. And I mean, it's, working with other departments or working with people outside the organization, state agencies. I mean, just local organizations. So that's the thing that sometimes I wonder if I've made a decision too quick, but so far so good. So, but yeah, that's been probably one of the things, besides the fact that it's that whole, somebody brings an idea, hey, we want to, we need to change this stoplight because okay, well, I've learned that, you could change that, but then the ripple effect that happens down the rest of the way. And it's like, I have learned so much from things like that. It's like, okay, but it's great because now when they come to it, we'll look at it, but I'm just going to tell you, it may not happen because here's what happens that you have, I never thought about that. So
were there some of these things that you learned the hard way when you made that transition?
Some, not really. I think because in Marble Falls, we have a really, really great team, and we have the conversations. And so it's been really nice to have, and I come up with an idea, and then one of the directors go, well, here, you could do this, but this is what's going to happen. And it's like, oh, okay. And, I went into it as like, I don't know everything. I want you to teach me.
Yes.
And so that's how I've approached this, because I mean, if it's the fire service, hey, great. I'm happy with that. But, and the other thing that I really did is, especially with the fire chief, it's like, if I start stepping off and being a fire chief, you have my permission to say, look, you need to go back to your office. I got the fire department.
That is a great amount of self-awareness, because I would imagine having a former fire chief as your ACM can either be the best situation in the world or the worst situation in the world.
Exactly. Especially when, when the fire chief now, we started our careers together.
So y'all know each other really
intimately. We've known each other for 37 years.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's interesting. So how many years have you spent in the fire service?
So it'd have been 35.
35. So you have 35 years of muscle memory of make decisions fast, let's go. Because I think in emergency services, it's interesting, both fire and police, I see a lot of, we deal with life and death, and we have to make fast decisions. So everything kind of starts being treated like life and death, and everything is, we got to move fast, we got to make decisions. And it's not always helpful, especially when it's not an emergency.
Exactly.
Is this something that fire chiefs in general could probably slow down on more things, kind of the way you're doing as an ACM?
As the fire chief itself, I mean, I had to learn coming off the fire truck and into administration, you were like, boom, boom, boom. And it's like, you can't do that. You have to, and I had to learn. And so, and that's where I was I'd start trying to work the collaboration with the other departments, talk to them, learn from them. And I think that's what really set me up, because it's like, I don't know everything and I'll never will.
Yeah.
But, I go to the experts. If I have an issue with a building or a public works, I'm not going to make it up. I'm going to go call the public works director. How can I help? What do I need to do here?
Doesn't like it when you just make things up, do they?
Well, they build stuff and they tear stuff up. But that's one thing that we have in common with public works from the fire service, right? We can tear stuff up.
Exactly. We're good at that. That's really funny. Is that so over that time, I guess the higher you climb, the slower you have to go, don't you?
Yes.
Because it just affects more and more and more people.
It does. It does. And you have to sit down and look at all the repercussions and things, and you have to look at all the possibilities. And it's taken that time on those major projects. What could go wrong?
Yes.
So if that way, it's not a surprise. And so, spending that little extra time to sit and think of, hey, what's the benefits of this? Then also too, what could be our obstacles to prevent us from reaching that goal? Yeah. And that has helped tremendously for me for over the last 17 years that I've been in administration. So
that's something I see that I think at these higher levels, we probably need to do a better job communicating to the front line how things actually work in terms of decision making. Because on the front lines, what I encounter all the time is, why don't they just make this change? Why don't they just fix this? I see what's wrong. I see the solution. I would have done it by now. And they don't understand the 100,000-foot view. They don't understand. And I think there's something we could do to communicate that better, to say, hey guys, I see that, but let me show you the big picture. Let me show you why we can't just make that decision instantly because of the ripples like you talked about.
Sure. And I had to learn to do that. And I came to Marble Falls from a large organization.
Okay.
But with, Marble Falls, it's a small one fire station town, right? Yeah. And so we were able, I had that opportunity. It's like, well, we need to do this. And I would just ask them questions.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking. I'm teaching them through asking them questions, and it's like then the light bulb comes on. It's like, you know what? I never thought about that. And then it's always funny when they come in. It's like, and they turn around and go, I don't want your job. I don't want to be fire chief. No, I don't want to be fire chief.
What's funny is everybody thinks they want to be at these higher levels, and then they get there and they're like, oh, this kind of sucks, actually. There's a lot to it I didn't understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm curious, your own curiosity, because you referenced in getting the frontline to understand something. I'm just going to ask them much questions. And in transitioning into this new role, you say, I'm not the expert, so I'm just going to ask a lot of questions.
Yep.
Have you always kind of been a naturally curious person? Is that how you've navigated things, or did you learn to do that?
I learned to do it.
Okay.
I mean, especially coming in, questions and things like that. Yeah, it was hard in the beginning because you didn't, when you move into, you get that big role, or even, just that company officer on the fire truck, it's like, you don't want to show that your weaknesses, right? And it's like, but now I learned even back then, it's like, I don't know everything, and learn what your crew has, or learn what your people bring to you. And it's like, I remember one of my drivers was a former electrician. It's like, okay, we got an electrical fire. You got it, buddy. You just tell me what you need. So that's the thing is learning those people. And that's why I said, I do ask the questions, because I've asked, teach me, because I want to understand, because they're making decisions, especially now that I'm an assistant city manager. They're making decisions. Well, help me walk through what your concerns are and why you're making the recommendation that you're making. So,
I'm sure you're aware of this, but the amount of vulnerability it requires to even say, I don't know. We don't see that a lot in leadership, just in society. I don't know that you see it a lot in the fire service, because fire service, kind of like police, is very much, I got this, I've got to appear strong at all times. And saying I don't know is weakness, is what they think.
Exactly. Yes.
So how did you develop that vulnerability? Because I'm guessing there was a season when you were younger. I mean, now you're in your 30s, 40s. So back in your 20s.
Yeah.
Back then, when it was more of the, I've got to have it all figured out. How did you learn to navigate that as a leader to be a little more vulnerable?
I think that the fact of it is when you say something and you're proven wrong, that feels worse than saying, I don't know. And that's how I learned. It's like, it's why do I keep setting myself up when I can just say, you know what, I don't know, but let me go look or let me dig into this. Or it's like, I don't know, teach me or help me understand. And
that is a great answer.
And I've also found is that people, when you ask for help, 99% of the people are going to like, yeah, let me help you.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be, you know.
That is the beauty of it. Because our fear says, well, when you say I don't know, people are going to make fun of you. We learned that in kindergarten, right?
Well,
and so
I've made fun all my life, so what the heck?
But we try so hard not to stand out.
Exactly.
And so ultimately then that saying, I don't know, what we find is that has not always been true, that there are people waiting and they cannot wait to serve us. They just need to know we need the help.
Exactly. And the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, as a leader is not ask for the help. Yeah. Because if you don't, you're going to become overwhelmed very quickly. Yes. Very quickly.
And we think we're good at hiding when that happens, but we're not. Like people know when we're overwhelmed. They know when we're not handling things well.
Yeah. It's one of those things too. It's like, and even knowing your weakness, right? Yeah. You think, if you think you're hiding your weaknesses from the people below you, you're wrong. They already know what they are. So
that's why we have a very open policy of owning my weaknesses. Everybody knows we're clear on what I'm not good at.
Exactly. That's what I tell them flat out. I know what my weaknesses are here. And if you see more, hey, come tell me.
Yeah. So you've developed into, I'll say it so you don't have to, but it seems like probably a humble, curious leader, which is what we need more of. What did you have to overcome internally? We've talked about a little bit about it, but I'm curious, were there other things you had to overcome inside yourself as you promoted and navigated these changes?
Well, the vulnerability was part of it. I mean, you have to say, I don't know, or you have to say, I'm wrong. And like I said, just learning from the experiences that when I actually said, I'm wrong, okay, I'm wrong. And that seems to hold people hold you in a higher regard because of that.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it's to the point is, when I was the fire chief, it was like at Marble Falls, it's like, hey, we have something. Hey, I make a decision or I'm thinking about doing this and you're free to tell me I don't think it's right or I think it's wrong. And, do it respectfully. Don't just,
don't smack me in the face.
Exactly.
And tell me I'm an idiot.
And, and I told them that from the beginning. And then the first time someone tried it, it's like, okay, you know what? Let me think about it and come back. It's like, you know what? I understand what you said. I get your points. And what if we do this? Or it's like, oh yeah, I was wrong. So that's
what I was curious about, because it's one thing to say, hey, challenge me. Please tell me if you think I'm crazy. Please tell me if you think I'm wrong. It's one thing to say it, but then for people to actually have the courage to do it, because it feels so counterintuitive, right?
Yeah. They're going to test you.
Yeah.
You're going to test you. And if that happens and that first time that happens and it pops off and I go the wrong way because it's a bad day, then I just ruined that relationship. And it'll take me forever to get that back. Yes. They won't do it. And I will end up I'll walk off the cliff. That's what happens.
Yeah. So. Because ultimately we say we want you to challenge us. When we're not steady and we blow up or we collapse into tears or whatever it is, that lack of steadiness, they stop trusting. They go, ooh, this is dangerous. I can't just say what I need to, even if he is in trouble and causing a problem. And I think that's true of not just people challenging us, but really every interaction we have with our people.
Yes.
I think I've got a really good relationship with my team. And when they make mistakes, I don't care. I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. But I guarantee you all it's going to take is one time of me blowing up in somebody's face. I'm going to lose all that trust I have built over years.
Exactly.
Have you always navigated leadership in a really pretty steady way, or is that something you've had to learn how to do?
I've had to learn how to do it. I've had to learn how to do it. I mean, it's and you want to talk? Ask my wife. Ask my boys.
Great.
Ask my boys. But yeah, no, it used to be that I would just lose my cool really, really quick. And I would even do that at work. And after I realized what I was doing and having that ability to realize, I was like, okay, no, you need to keep your cool. And once again, having staff that you build a relationship with. And I just remember several times that we'd be in something I just remember the 2018 flood in Marble Falls. Things were happening and I was starting to lose my cool. And my administrative assistant is sitting there in the emergency operations center for me. She stands up and looks at me and goes, you need to go take a walk. I said, okay, you're right. And she said, we got it. So, I took a 5-10 minute walk. I don't remember what it was, but I came back and was like, okay. And that's the things that once again, having a relationship with people, and that's important in the leadership, having that relationship so they can turn around and help you because you're going to help them. So
having that relationship, but also you growing yourself, because my guess is 5 years earlier, you might have been open to that feedback.
Well, probably about 10 years ago. But yeah, I have learned, I have learned, and when I first made fire chief, it was that way. But then as things progressed, and I was blessed to have my first assistant chief, it was great because he was older than I was, but we learned from one another so much.
Yeah.
And it was so much to banter back and forth, but we were growing each other in different areas. And so that, I will never forget that person. So
I'm curious, and this may or may not be the case, but when you're in that season of you're leading and you're not necessarily leading steadily, you are quick to anger, you are quick to get that, whether it's family side or at work. Does that coincide in your story with seasons of burnout, seasons where you were just overwhelmed and there was too much happening and you weren't able to rest?
Absolutely. I think even to the fact of it, when you're talking, it's overwhelmed. Sometimes it's just a day of everything that's happening at once and you're overwhelmed and you're just like, oh, now what?
Yeah.
One more thing. It's like, right, that's it. I've had it. And but learning to walk away and take the break, that's been hard. And in the beginning, it's been hard, but now it's like, okay, I realize it. I mean, there's times that things are just going on. It's like, oh, well, it's time to go take a walk. So,
are there times that the learn to walk away is, I need a 10-minute walk around the office to just cool down? Or is it you see it happening enough, it's, hey, I need a few days off. I need some time to kind of decompress here.
Well, we have done that. Yes, I have gotten to that point that I've got to take a few days off, or it's like, hey, I can't get to I got to have a vacation, right? And my vacation's not coming fast enough. So I have done that too. And I've, over my career, I have learned that I tried to space out my vacations about every 3 to 4 to 5 months at the max. I'm taking some time off.
I like that.
Yeah. So it's because it's going to build up.
How good are you? Because that's one of the rhythms is we need the vacations where we're extended time off. How good are you at the rhythms of the daily rest, the weekly, those other rhythms we need to observe?
Well, daily wise, yeah. I mean, because I've had to learn. I mean, when I first became a fire chief, I mean, my wife was like, put your phone down. I was more worried about answering emails instead of, and then all of a sudden I'd get an email and it'd be something that would just blow me up. Right. And it's like, why? And she goes, why are you doing that to yourself? And it's like, if it wasn't for her, there's a lot of things I probably wouldn't have realized.
Yeah.
But I've learned, it's like, so now what do? It's, 8:00 at night.
Yep.
I set it down. If it's an emergency, somebody will call me.
Yes.
It'll be a text message. That's what I've told everybody. In fact, that's what our city manager, Mike Hodges, said.
Yeah.
If it's an emergency, you call. If you need it right away, you call, no matter what the time is. Text message, if it's like, hey, get to me as fast as you can. If not, send an email if it can wait.
We did a retreat for y'all recently, and I loved, part of it was him standing up and defining that for everybody, giving them permission to disconnect, giving them permission to live their lives outside of the office and understand, hey, if it's a true emergency, it'll get to you.
Yeah.
Like you're going to find out about it. You don't need to be connected 24/7.
Yeah. And I mean, even to the point that I've even tried to step back, even at this role, is not sending a director an email because I thought of something at 7:00 tonight because I don't want him to answer it. Yeah. And I've done that. And they've answered me right away. And it's like, I didn't mean for you. I said, don't answer this till tomorrow. And you still did. Well, I had it. And it's like, well, you need to put your phone down, but I don't expect you to answer me.
Yeah.
It's especially the ones who have kids. I mean, I can understand that. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to miss that time.
Exactly. And it's so funny because I've had some leaders push back and say, well, it's in my head. I need to get it out of my head. I get that. Put it somewhere.
I send myself an email.
Send yourself an email. Do something. Because ultimately there is this societal expectation that when boss pops into my inbox, it doesn't matter what time it is, I need to take care of it.
Yep.
And we say, hey, don't worry about that. I used to put in the subject line, do not read this until Monday, and I'd get a reply back immediately.
Exactly. Same thing.
I'm like, what are you doing, guys? And they're like, you're stressing me out just dropping your name in my inbox, And so I think there is something to us having the intentionality and self-control to say, yeah, maybe we do need to get out of our head at 8:00 at night. If it's in there, write it down, send it to yourself, do whatever you have to.
Right.
But don't drop it on somebody unless it's an emergency.
Exactly.
Outside of that, Wait till the next day.
And that'll be a phone call. And I have learned, I send myself an email, and then sometimes I get up in the morning and I was get ready to send that email. It's like, that was a bad idea.
That's really, what's true is because there's this limit to the really good ideas. They're happening when we're fresh and we're rested and we're working. You have 5:30, 6 o'clock. The good ideas are done. Sorry, they're through.
They are.
And so your 8 o'clock epiphany is probably not going to be as golden in the morning.
Yep.
I really like that. That's actually really valuable. So having two sides to your career, what do you say to young people thinking of either going into the fire service or just getting into city management and public service in general?
This question is like, I saw it as like, you know what, I can answer this one because both my boys are in public service.
Yes.
They're both firefighters.
Yes.
And I have told them both some of the things. It's like, number one, you have to make time for yourself, your family. Don't work all the time. Don't work all the extra jobs. Don't work all the overtime.
Yeah.
It's great. The money's great, but you're going to burn yourself out. So don't, shy away from that. Keep it.
Yeah.
Do it for a little bit, but then take a break. Yeah. And the other thing I really talk to them is about, and I wish I would have known this and done this earlier in my career, was the fact of realizing that, especially in the fire service, everything is talking about the training, the technical aspect of doing your job, but 98% of what we do in any job is dealing with the people.
Yes.
And I wish I'd have started with my leadership development much earlier.
Yes.
And so, that's where I have stressed to my sons is, start with that leadership. Yes, you need to worry about the lithium ion battery fires. I get it, but you need to spend time for yourself.
Yeah.
Especially as my youngest is a captain, you need to spend time of developing yourself as a leader. And he has. I mean, and he said, what do you need to do? And I don't know how many times, hey, Dad, what books would you recommend? Or, it's like leadership's, the principles are there. One that excites you and that you can get into. And we share books all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome.
How old are your sons?
My oldest, now you asked me a hard question. I have to do math. Oh, really? Roughly
20s, 30s.
My youngest is 28 and my oldest is 35.
Okay. And I look at that and I'm kind of the same as you, is in that if I had really started this leadership journey in my 20s, like early 20s, how different would my life look? Because it really started to kick off I think we learned about leading just on the job training by doing,
right?
Which means we did a lot of bad leadership basically. But to start investing in it, to start getting coaching, to start reading more, to start taking classes and conferences, and man, my life would look wildly different.
Mine too. I remember the day that the light bulb came on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was. And my wife and I were at some event, and John Maxwell was there speaking for 6-7 hours.
Yeah.
And he was talking, and the light bulb came on, both of us.
Yeah.
And we walked right out there and bought the books, the package, and we started. And as I look back on my life, I wish I'd have done that, in my early 20s when I got into starting the career, because everything that you learned back then was about management, not leadership.
Exactly.
And that's what I have stressed to my sons is it's not the management part is there, but you need to be a leader, and that takes self-development.
Yes, it does. And I'm curious, as a dad, in emergency services, there's some similarities between police and fire, and there's some differences. And I talked to a lot of police officers because that profession has gotten really hard over the last few years in ways that I don't think firefighter quite has. I talked to a lot of police officers that their kids are thinking of getting into it, and they are like, do anything else except this. How did y'all feel when your son said, we want to be firefighters?
Yep. I remember the day that my youngest decided. I mean, it's my wife was also in emergency services.
Okay.
And so my wife is an ex-police officer.
Okay.
Ex-paramedic.
So
she's a nurse.
Both sides.
Yes, we understand both sides. And so the kids grew up with that understanding, with my wife being a nurse, and we were talking things. Yeah. And when they said that they want to be in the fire service, hey, I'm okay with that. And if they said if they wanted to be a police officer, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because that opportunity to serve others is really what, in my opinion, we're here to do. And it is so wonderful to watch them do that. And they get it and they're having a blast. And that's, it's a good career. It is a good career.
Well, and as hard as those careers can be, they always need more good people.
Yes.
And if you've got good kids, it's like, no, we need y'all out there. We need you leading the way and creating the future. And how much do you get to mentor and pour into these younger generations as they're coming into any kind of public service in your role now?
Well, in my role now, I don't get as much as I want to. I'll put it that way. As a fire chief, especially at Marble Falls, is like we even went through the assistant chief and I and she was my assistant emergency management coordinator. We sat down and actually went through some book reads on leadership with the entire department.
Yeah.
We'd go up there at lunch, have lunch with them and go through. That was great. Or having the opportunity to give them a project to help them develop those skills. Now my role is it's harder to do that because I don't have a lot of time, but usually it turns out to be if someone says, hey, you have a few moments, can I come talk to you, or hey, can we go to lunch? Yeah. And I really enjoy that because I look at it from my standpoint. My legacy will never ever be a name on a plaque, a name on a building, or anything like that. My legacy is going to be the number of lives that I touched and made better, and help them to become a leader that they can develop leaders. That's what I want my legacy to be.
Yeah. And that's true for all of us, really. And what's interesting is my sons are in their early 20s, and I'm trying to get them to understand now the idea that the paycheck and the title don't really matter. If you're working hard, you're going to get them.
Yep.
And they're ultimately not super fulfilling in a way that we want them to be. But those people that you look at and go, hey, their life is better. When you get that message or that text or that email that just says thank you, man, it lights us up.
It does.
And that is the work. That is the sacred nature of leadership. And I think it is a unique thing that leaders, because of the position, can pour into people in a way that nobody else can. And it's funny to me how often I will work with teams or work with young people, and I will tell them something, but because I'm in a position of leadership, it hits and it lands, and I'll hear, my dad used to say that all the time. I'm like, I get it. That was your dad.
Yes.
And I'm in a different position now, so I get to speak into your life, and that's the magic. That is the reason to get out of bed, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I really do enjoy that, and I mean, I miss it on sometimes? You bet I do, but I'll have those opportunities, and sometimes that opportunities are little things that you never realize that you've done, and so it doesn't have to be that it's a formal mentoring thing. It's just having a conversation with somebody, and
it can be a couple moments.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be.
And what I find is I'm then looking for those moments all day. I'm looking for those little things I can do, anything I can do to serve. One of the things I'm really excited about these days is this idea of leadership being sacred. There being something truly unique and sacred about the role, whatever type of leadership you're in, which means then all the work we do on ourselves as leaders is also sacred. And we should really create space for that. We should create the opportunities to develop and grow and invest in ourselves. And I think back to, it wasn't until I started investing in myself that anything changed in my life. Up to that point, I'm just being an idiot over and over and hitting my head on the wall. But eventually that investment in me, that sacred investment in my leadership mattered. What does investment look like for you at this point?
Well, at this point, there is a lot that I'm learning, and that's where it's, like I said earlier, there's a lot that I don't know, and so from learning how to I've always interacted with counsel, but this is at a different level, and have to learn different interactions and learning that, and learning the different things. As I said, the consensus things, those things are like, hey, this is an idea. It's like, yeah, but here's the ripple effect of this. That's what I've learned, and so now it's. Man, there's just so much. I mean, I sometimes I feel like, did I really make the job? Am I really making a difference here? But that's I look at it though is that I'm not quite 2 years into this role, and that's okay because I have become more comfortable in it. And it's in the beginning it wasn't, and not only that, coming up to the organization as a fire chief, I'm sure that other directors are like, well, he's only going to worry about fire. Well, I don't. I have other ones that I have to worry about, right? And so
and you're in such a unique position because you've got a very experienced fire chief who you know deeply, you trust. You have a very good police chief as well. You have such solid leadership in both of those departments that you don't have to sit there and worry about them constantly. You can focus on all the other things on your plate.
And I do. And I would say that's across the board in our whole organization. It makes it wonderful to come to work because we have a great team. They work as a team. There's not the silos. And that's one thing I've told my city manager, Mike, that I said, look, as we continue to grow in our community, we've got to make sure that we work hard not to build those silos between the departments, because that's the only way that we're going to stay the culture that we have, that we've built. And, I've been a part of that culture, and I really, really enjoy it. And it is fun to come to work and look at and celebrating those wins with those other departments and things that they're doing. And, the things you talk about is, what do I do in this? A lot of times I'll just stop and there's a public works crew. I mean, I did it last Thursday. They are at work and I go over and talk to them for a few minutes. I mean, it's like, just have a little conversation with them. Exactly. It does. It does. And of course, we joke, we laugh, because it's not everything has to be serious in our lives. So,
And there's a connection there, right? That's how we build those relationships, is those tiny little investments. It's every once in a while we're going to buy you some pizza, but really it is just, hey, he took time out of his day just to see how we were doing and see if he could support us in some way. That makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Well, part of this project is really trying to start a movement towards much more sustainability in terms of how we lead our people, because we need them to thrive. We talked about at the retreat, a thriving staff is the foundation of a thriving city. What are things we need to rethink, either in city management or in the fire service, to create a more sustainable future for our people?
Yeah, I don't care. City management, fire service, doesn't make a difference. It's my first thing is I work very hard to try to take each employee and say, here's what your job descriptions are, and hear how you are making a difference. Whether that's from the person, the front clerk, that's the utility building clerk, to the firefighter, to the police officer. This is how you are making this organization reach and service the citizens, is through that, because it's connecting those dots for them, because they get tied up in the mundane and the same old things over and over. And it's all cyclic, right? I mean, it may be utility billing, and this is cutoff day, or this is the day that the bills go out. But how do you connect that to what the overall mission of the city is, and what their little piece is making that difference? So I've worked very hard about trying to understand, when we start something new, is like, how are you doing this, and why are we doing this? Okay, well, hear how this is leading up to what the ultimate goals are.
That's that moment to moment leadership, I think, of you're walking through the utility billing department to say, hey, Sue, don't forget you guys are doing an amazing job. Like, you are genuinely helping people in whatever specific way you've identified. And how do you, because I always tell people there's no budget for that. Like, we're always complaining about our limitations because we don't have enough budget. There's no budget stopping you from sharing that with people.
No.
And so ultimately it's one of the best tools we have as leaders. How have you've developed that obviously over the years. How do you encourage your leaders that you're helping to do the same thing and to help make those connections? Because I think a lot of people from our generation, everything is, well, that's why you get a paycheck. The paycheck is the thank you, so just shut up and do your job. And that's pretty common. And so we're understanding that doesn't work real well.
It doesn't, especially with the millennials, right? Because it's the Y generation, right? And that's where.
By the way, we were also the Y generation. We just got it beat out of us.
Exactly, we did. It's like. No, just shut up, sit in the corner.
You asked why you're going to get punished, so shut up. And ultimately, but we needed it, right? That's why kids from the earliest ages are asking why about everything.
Exactly.
And eventually people forced it out of us, but we need it as much as they do.
Well, yes, we do. And you asked about how I my leaders. And tell them, being very direct, it's like, the trick of being a leader is connecting that for them.
Yeah.
And so that's how encouraging them to do that, and And that's where I think a lot of times just developing them and spending that time developing them, that's what ends up helping, and they will end up connecting that too.
Yeah.
That, hey, this is what I need to do. And so, it's keeping the cities thriving. We've got to invest in employees. You heard about some of the things when you came to Marble Falls is, our supervisors, we have a supervisor training that even if you're not a supervisor, you're a potential supervisor. We're going to put you through that training.
Yes. Yeah.
And now we have another program that is the elite program, which is with Texas Tech University our local campus, that if we have emerging leaders that we think are going to be directors, assistant directors, or even some high-level supervisors, we want them to go through that.
Yeah.
And so that way we're investing them because, I remember one of my fire chiefs telling me long ago, he said, I'm going to invest in you and I'm going to use the hell out of you while you're here, but I know I'm going to lose you one day.
Yes.
And he was right. But that resonated with me is I can't hold people back. I'm going to develop people and we're going to lose them. And that's okay because there's always somebody in the wings that are willing to step up.
If you're a good leader, that's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
Like and this is funny because I deal with a lot of leaders that they get this idea that, okay, my team is set. I don't ever have to worry about this again. I can just now do my job and I'm not having to train and hire and do all this. The job is training and hiring. If your team is static and nobody's ever getting new opportunities or advancing, you're actually doing something wrong. And you're probably, I'm just now thinking about this, you're probably being really selfish.
Oh.
And I think that's hard to say, no, I'm going to develop y'all so that you do leave.
Yes.
Like, I don't want you here in a decade.
Yeah. Well,
at least not in this role.
Well, I'll train somebody if they end up surpassing me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right. That's going back to me realizing as I got older, I was like, you know what, my legacy is to helping people succeed. Yeah. And that's what I want to do. And so, it hurt. Does it hurt? I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt when they leave. You walk in, I was like, well, I'm leaving. I was like, really? Okay. Yeah. But I get it. I get it. So I'm sure
that's all in how we define success, though. If I define success as my people are growing and advancing and getting new opportunities, then when they come in, there's the bittersweet of I'm actually sad to lose you, but golly, look at what you're doing.
Yes,
look at where you're going. That gets to be exciting.
It does.
There has to be, I think, an element of that of I don't have anything to prove anymore. And is that something you've landed on where you just have that I'm genuinely just here to serve others? I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody.
Yes. I mean, I had to. I mean, I will prove to people by what I do on a daily basis and being consistent.
Yeah.
And that's what I work hard at doing is being consistent. I mean, the hardest person to lead is myself. Right?
We're real pain, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. If I would just listen to myself,
our wives would attest to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. If I would listen to what she tells me all the time, and I would listen to myself when I'm telling other people, I would be good. But no, and I realize that the hardest person to lead is myself. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's why I had to learn. It's like, okay, yeah, you need to learn to lead yourself and be consistent. And then I don't have anything to prove. I will prove by just what I do on my daily actions and how I treat other people because, the golden rule, right? Yeah. Treat others as you want to be treated. And that's the way I really believe in that. And so, there's going to be some out there like, I think we need to take a break. I need to walk out of here before I say something, but that's okay. But I really think that's where I'm not out to prove anything. If there's anything I got to prove anybody that I have to prove anything to, that's myself. And that's where I work hard at proving is you got this. And there's a lot of times I'm not going to say as leaders, we doubt, right? It's like, did I really make the right decision here? But then it's like, but if you don't learn from them, I mean, the worst thing you can do is not make a decision.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like, okay, I made a decision. Now it's time to readjust that decision.
Yes. Well, and just asking the question, am I sure I made the right decision? Like that's how you learn. That's how we get to be better at this. I've got kind of a bonus question for you based on your experience. You referenced times when you weren't quite as steady of a leader, and especially on the home front.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is very common for our families to get the worst of us, just from even a rhythm perspective. We're tired when we get home.
Mm-hmm.
We got nothing left. And so it's very natural that happens. And this actually comes from kind of a conversation I had with my wife a couple days ago about what I missed in terms of our kids' younger years because I was so work focused.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you had advice to give, not just to young people in public service, but young men and women who are new fathers and mothers that want to lead, they want to be successful, they want to provide for their families, but also want to do that well, what advice would you give them?
Well, for your families, I mean, you have to make that time and you have to put those boundaries up. And it took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah.
And I learned it way too late. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I learned it way too late and I missed some. But now it's like, it's okay. That pile of work, no matter what, it's going to be there.
It's
just like you just don't realize that pile's there. When you come back from vacation, I hear people have always said, I don't want to go on vacation because the work is so much. Yeah. No, that work's always been there.
Always.
It's always been there.
Yes.
It's not that it's any different. It's just that you're so into doing what you're doing and you've got your head down and working, you don't realize you need to take that break.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing I say to the young ones that have kids. You have to make time for those kids because you will never get that time back. And that's where you're going to make a big difference in those kids and help them develop and you know what, and having some fun with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how much kids can be a blast, especially in those younger years.
And then teenager.
Before they hit the teenagers, there's just a disaster always. But they can be so much fun. But I think we miss out on that because we are tired. We're unfocused. We're not focused on that necessarily. And it's funny, a couple conversations today as we've had these interviews, we've really talked about the younger generation and different things we desperately want them to understand. Mm-hmm. Some of it they're going to have to learn through pain.
Sure.
But some of it, I'm just praying that they hear it often enough from leaders in their life.
Or someone else besides their parents.
Yes, someone besides their parents. They go, you know what, I think I'm going to try that and listen to that because my goal is that, I don't think I got really good at boundaries and engaging until my kids were like mid to late teens. And I really regret the 10, 15 years leading up to that I was so bad at it. And I miss so much. Boy, when we have grandkids, I'm going to be locked in. You guys are not. I'm going to work like 2 weeks a month. The rest I'm with grandkids. Totally going to rock
exactly.
that. But on this side of things, like I do regret that deeply. And I want people to, maybe they don't get good at it in the teens. Maybe they get good at it when they're 5 or 6. Even that's a win. That's better. And so I appreciate your insight on that.
Oh yeah.
That is, as much as we're trying to help people lead in a public service and a work context, we're leaders at home too.
We are. And I think to me, it's natural and I get it. And I think if you would ask 100 leaders or people in levels, high levels, or even just people at work, it's like, I wish I'd have done more.
Yes.
And so I don't think it's uncommon. So it's not. And so, but it's the thing of it is you have to be intentional.
That's it. Right.
And there. That's it. And being intentional and to the point that, there are, I still go back to my admin or my assistants.
Yeah.
She promoted to assistant emergency management coordinator, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, she had little kids. And so it's like things were happening. It's like, okay, I don't want you to miss it. Well, I got this. No, I want you to go to that.
Yeah.
We'll worry about your hours later.
Yes.
I don't want you to miss that opportunity to spend those time at the kids' functions and things like that. And it's like, being flexible with things like that. And sometimes that's hard to do in municipal government or just government period.
It is. We always talk about the idea of if you are an emotionally healthy leader, you're leading with empathy and grace. Mm-hmm. Empathy is considering the person on the other side of the table. Grace is flexibility. And there are times we absolutely can't be flexible. If it is a giant emergency, if there's floods or fires or whatever that the city's facing, emergency management coordinator, we kind of need you locked in. But there's not a fire this Tuesday. There's not a flood this Tuesday.
Let's hope not.
Go to the baseball game,
Yes.
go to the play, go do the things.
Yes.
And that's where I think we get so locked into everything we do as an emergency, and
Mhm.
it's really not.
Just-
And if we can get better at that, I think we talked about that earlier. If we can just learn to, I think, right size the problem,
Right.
and say, is this truly an emergency? If it's not, great. That's in the bucket of we will get to it. Don't
Yes.
worry. But also, here's some other important things that need to be prioritized.
It does. It does. And those are, I don't care what industry you're in, there are always those type of emergencies, and we just have to learn to prioritize that.
Yeah.
And to me, it's prioritizing that family, and because you're not going to get that back. And I realize that I'm not going to get that back, and that's why I've stressed that with my boys. It's you got to spend some time with the family too. So,
do your boys have kids yet?
My oldest does. My youngest doesn't.
Okay.
So my youngest just got married last Memorial Day. Yeah. So
that's exciting.
And of course, she's an emergency service too. She's a dispatcher, so it's like it's like
I know how that goes.
Yep.
That's funny. Well, one last question, because I'm always fascinated by the number of fire chiefs and police chiefs that do make the leap into city management. Are there unique things that y'all learn or that you face or ways of doing things in those areas that you think apply really, really well to city management?
There are. I mean, it seems that especially in the fire service, you learn a lot of the development side of things, and so that's important. But to me, it's not your knowledge of things like that. It's how are you managing with the people and dealing with the public. And so, as a police chief, as a fire chief, you are a community staple. They expect to see you. They expect to talk to you and walk up to you, and they know who you are. I don't know who they are when they walk up, but they know who I am, and you still talk to them. And having that ability to have that conversation and listen with them in empathy and understanding, because if they're coming to you, if they have a problem, you have to say, okay, I understand, or let me see. It may not be my department, right? As a fire chief, it may not be my department but let me see what I can do about getting to you, and then making sure you have the contact information, and then sometimes it's just reaching back out to them, because that's always been my thing with the customer service side of what we do is take the opportunity to wow. The citizen, right? Yeah. And so when I call back, hey, did so and so that did they contact you about your issue? And it's like, oh yes, thanks for checking.
Yes.
And if not, it's like, oh, let me call back and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And
let me dig a little deeper for you.
But I think that's what's made this. It's prepared me for that, because I am out in the public, and you are seen as one of the senior leaders of a community, and having that ability to talk to people, even when as a fire chief or police chief, it's under stressful situations at times, and you have to learn how to handle that.
Do that with some poise.
Exactly, do it with some poise, and wait till the camera's off, and then just lose it. But no, I think that's to me is what I've seen so thus far where I'm at in my assistant city manager career. But
that's actually a very unique insight. I wasn't quite expecting that, because and this doesn't take anything away from other departments, but like your city's finance director, your city's parks and recreation director, people don't really know who they are. They are not public wise in terms of the profile. It's just not, it's different.
Yes, it's a little different, right? I mean, because it's something major happens. It's either the police chief or a fire chief or the mayor it's on the TV or on the paper. And, and that's where I said, a lot of people know me. They don't know me because I'm in the paper. And if I'm a front page, and I owed ice cream to the staff. So it's like,
that was the deal.
Oh, yeah.
You made the front page.
You make the front page. Well, that's how it is with anybody in the fire service. You make the picture. You have to, I know I owe them a lot of ice cream, but that's okay.
That is really funny, actually. No, I love that insight, because that does transfer really well into the city manager's office.
It does.
That is really interesting. Russell, this has been a pleasure, man.
I've enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
Of course, my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. You might also like our other podcast, The Leader Lab. You can find it on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. Just search for The Leader Lab. Each episode is under 10 minutes. It's just a quick thought to help you level up your leadership. You'll also find all the other leadership content we are putting out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search for @ForwardPartner.